Well, hey folks, it's your old pal King Waspinator here. Earlier today, I picked up a copy. Well, I didn't pick it up. It just showed up in the mail of Star Trek Adventures, the Gamma Quadrant Sourcebook. And while skimming through it earlier, I actually saw they had a pretty interesting little section on the history and origins of the Dominion. It seems fairly well researched and written. I figure I'm just going to go over it here, and if anyone watching has any questions at the end, drop them in the chat or something. And if that's not the case, then I guess that'll just be the end of the video, and you can leave a comment in the comments below, or however it goes. But anyway, just going to read straight from the book. Might pause and occasionally interject my own thing. It's only a couple pages worth of history, covering through the origins of the flight of the changelings up through the aftermath of the Herc War. So let's begin. Ahem. What is now known as the Dominion has its origins in the changeling species, a group of advanced beings who eventually became known to the rest of the galaxy as the Founders. Members of this exceptional people consider themselves superior to others, the Solids, and for good reason. They can alter their physical form in an instant, from something as small as a mouse to as large as a shuttle. They can become monstrously ugly or angelically beautiful on a whim. While the Founders were originally solid beings very much like humans, Klingons, Romulans, and others, they long ago transcended their original biology. It's a common theme with a lot of Star Trek evolution is the idea that, beings will achieve some sort of higher form past the humanoid sentient form, although in Star Trek most of these species seem to go towards becoming a psychic energy being, whereas apparently the changelings turn themselves into shape-shifting liquid, but whatever. Changelings have no known maximum lifespan, and they can withstand the rigors of deep space. Their physical superiority led others to become jealous and fearful. While initially friendly, the Founders came to know nothing but hatred from the Solids that they encountered. As the changelings fled from persecution, they found no relief. When they came to an uninhabited world, their pursuers soon caught up with them and began the slaughter anew. Wherever they found new groups of Solids, they were always turned away. Their fight became an exodus. As the centuries and then millennia passed, the changelings were alone in the cold void of space. They discovered that their fluid forms were capable of mingling into compound bodies. When they mixed physically, the changelings also found that their minds became entwined with one another. It was as if a new holistic identity, more than the sum of its members' minds, manifested with every coupling. As the years passed, the changelings all merged into one collective consciousness known as the Great Link. With single-minded dedication, they hurtled through the stars, seeking to find the one thing that all beings truly want: a home. The early years. Tens of thousands of years passed. With the wariness of a hunted prey and the patience of immortals, the Great Link decided to begin testing local space for a suitable world. The goal was to find a place where they would not be subject to the hazards of space, such as subspace anomalies or radiation storms, and which would be hidden from would-be exterminators. The Great Link sent out individuals as scouts to determine the best location to found a new home world. During their travels, some of these agents attempted to make peaceful contact with the inhabitants of the planets that they found, but all were repulsed by natives who mistook the changelings for gods or demons. Eventually, the changelings were able to find friendly species. Among their first allies were the Dry, a race of hunters, and the Vorta, which the Founders turned into clever negotiators. From this small beginning came the mighty Dominion. By using a combination of the Vorta's charisma, the might of the armies of the Dry created for the Founders, and the cunning of the changelings themselves, the Dominion eventually achieved its goal of subjugating local space. The Herc War. As the Dominion continued to grow and thrive, the Founders absorbed dozens of worlds into the fold. For the first time, they found themselves the subject of fear from the Solids, approaching negotiations and war from a position of superiority. Around 900 years ago, the Dominion faced its first, and until its encounter with the Federation, greatest challenge. A species known in the Alpha Quadrant as the Herc, and whose true name the Founders erased from history, began raiding Dominion worlds. The Herc's powerful vessels supported wicked plasma cannon disruptors, powerful engines, and nearly impenetrable shields. In the end, it was the brave fighting force of the Jem'Hadar, combined with the subterfuge of the Founders, which brought down the Herc. The invaders had spread themselves too thin, striking out in all directions and fighting wars on too many fronts to be effective. Just a few changeling infiltrators were able to sabotage key ship systems during battles, which in turn allowed boarding teams to capture Herc fleets. Vorta scientists did their best to reverse engineer the technology of the Herc fleet to create the first generation of Jem'Hadar battle cruisers. By the time the Herc began to pull back their other forces from around the galaxy, the Dominion had made inroads into Herc territory. They razed the invaders' home planet. The rest of their territory fell, and what remained of the Herc fleet scattered. The Vorta report occasional rumors of Herc presence, but there hasn't been a confirmed Herc sighting in over 7 centuries. This war had a galvanizing effect on the Dominion. In the decades before the invasion, several worlds had grown discontented with the Founder rule, and a few had even openly rebelled. The member worlds saw the war as a noble defense on their way of life. The member worlds saw the war as a noble defense of their way of life. Vorta propaganda agents wove a new narrative of the Dominion as a mutual protection network and as a unifying force for good in the galaxy. Seeing how effective the war had been at ensuring the loyalty of member worlds, the Founders began a new policy of using unabsorbed worlds as scapegoats. The paranoia, a threatening other, that drove the changelings spread to their subjects. The famine on Alnara 4 wasn't caused by an error in supply lines, it was the treachery of alien races beyond the Dominion's borders. If the Vorta bureaucrats judged 2 or more nearby systems as being too resistant to Dominion ideals or too powerful to annex efficiently, the Dominion would covertly set the aliens at one another's throats. After the war sufficiently weakened and wearied the systems, the Jem'Hadar would swoop in, decimate the side that the Founders deemed less useful, and then would be welcomed as heroes. The war with the Herc also slowed the Dominion's southward expansion plans. Herc territory originally included the area of space around the Gamma Quadrant terminus of the Bajoran wormhole. As the Dominion explored these planets, they found that Herc settlements were often booby-trapped. More than one expeditionary force was lost after a science team accidentally triggered an abandoned doomsday device. Evidence of other ancient cultures, some of whom had persecuted the changelings before their exodus, including the Takan, Iconians, Preservers, and others. As the Founders are nearly immortal, they take the long view of things. Species in this area were mostly left to their own devices. Founder infiltrators made sure to guide the local species exploration, trade, and settlement efforts away from Dominion space. The Founders used the alien races as unwitting scouts and gradually, over the course of centuries, pushed their boundaries south, only absorbing a planet when they were sure that there were no ancient dangers lurking within 100 systems radius. Though painfully slow, this expansion method suited the Founders' orderly plan. So, anyway, that's what they have to say about the history of the Dominion. As far as the origins of fictional theocratic fascist star empires run by shape-shifting godlings, I guess it's plausible. And seems, structured within the details of the canon history as presented in Deep Space Nine. I like how they gave a focus on the Herc, which, from what I recall, was largely only brought up in the Sword of Kahless episode. And with the dog barking at somebody as a final note, I guess we'll have to cut this live stream short. Anyway, if you have any things you want to bring up about Dominion history from the passage I just read, feel free to leave it in the comments below, and have a good night.